Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be my May and June wrap-up. I never filmed my May wrap-up because I did not read a lot in May, and I kind of just wanted to forget about May and not think about it, so I put off filming my May wrap-up, and thankfully I did read a little bit more in June, and I'm kind of getting out of my reading slump very slowly. Very slowly. So I just decided to combine my May and June wrap up together. We're gonna first talk about May, so let's get into it. First up is Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. I actually read this for the Literally Dead book club hosted by Kayla, or Books and Lala, here on YouTube. I was kindly asked to be a co-host for the month of May, and this is the book that we were reading. I will link the live show down below if you missed it and you want to see our full discussion on it. But in this story, we're following the main character Anna, who works at the casino. She's very much an outsider, she's very much bullied, and she just doesn't fit in. She feels just like an outcast, and there are girls going missing on the reservation, and some kind of weird things are happening around the casino, and it just feels very shady and not right. People are looking into the disappearances, and Anna's kind of trying to figure out what's going on with the casino, what's going on with the missing girls, and then her sister ends up going missing as well, so she's kind of in this rush against the clock to find out what happened to her sister. I had heard a lot of discussion about this book, if it was a horror, if it was a thriller, if it was a mystery, and honestly I don't know how I would classify this book. It's very hard. There are horror elements to the book. I could see why people would consider it a horror. For me personally, I just don't see it being any of the three that much. I feel like it's kind of its own type of book, but there isn't really much of a mystery to this book. I feel like what you see is what you get with it. For me, I just really wanted the horror to be pushed a little bit more. It has a lot of social horror, which I think is really well done. I think the discussion around murdered or missing Indigenous women is really well done and really thoughtful, and I really loved that aspect. I think I just expected different kind of horror elements and it to be more of a mix with the social horror and then just regular horror. So I was expecting a mix of both, and we do kind of get that, but I think I just wanted more from it. But overall, I really did actually enjoy this book, and I will definitely be checking out more from Nick Medina, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. Next up is my Patreon's book club pick for May, which was Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. I really wanted to love this. It's a short story collection, it's Japanese horror, and I was really hoping that this was going to be similar to Goth by Otsuichi. Unfortunately for me, I just don't think it really hit the mark. I think the stories were fine. I think a lot of them left something to be desired, and I was kind of waiting for more. And I think the interconnectedness isn't as there as I wanted it to be. Again, I'm comparing it to Goth because that's my ultimate standard for a short story collection. This was very average. I felt like a lot of the stories were very mild, and I was expecting more from them. I kind of wanted more horror, more horrificness. I was kind of really wanting it to push, and it wasn't there. It just kind of left a light creeping feeling. Only some of them I was just kind of confused by. I can see why a lot of people like this one, and I can see how it really hits what other people want, but for me it was just very middle of the road. I'm giving it 3 stars. Next up is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kleiwer. This just came out in June, and I had an arc of this, which I was super excited by. This was one of my anticipated releases of the year. It's about this couple who bought this house and they are going to flip it. However, one day they get a knock on the door, and it's this man with his family, and he's claiming to have lived in the house as a kid, and he wants to take a look around. Now, I absolutely did not like this book. I think it is kind of not what it says it is. I think I expected something completely different going into it, mainly because it is compared to the movie Parasite, and I did have lower expectations because, you know, when a book is compared to a movie, it's not always going to be like that movie. So I personally think comparing this to Parasite is very misleading. I kind of see why they said it, but I personally don't think comparing it to Parasite is accurate. For me, it was just a really annoying reading experience. It read a lot like House of Leaves, which I know a lot of people love, but I hate that book. I really didn't get the hype with it. I thought it was super boring and a chore to read. And honestly, this felt very similarly. I just didn't really get it. It's very ambiguous, especially at the end. You really don't get any answers. So if you're someone that likes answers at the end, like me, you will not like this because at the end, it really doesn't tell you anything. But if you like House of Leaves and you like ambiguous things and you like the sound of this, I highly recommend it because then I think it'll be perfect for you. For me, not so much. I'm giving it 2 stars. Next up, I read Bound Feet by Kelsey Yu. This is a novella and it's about these 2 women who are friends and they have this bond because they both have lost their children. And one night they sneak into Portland's Chinese Garden and Ghost Museum to kind of hold this ritual in honor of their children, and then weird things start happening. I'm gonna be honest, I really liked this one. However, I completely forgot that I had read it. I just went to pick up this book and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I even read that. So it's definitely not something that I find super memorable. I think it's a very typical kind of ghost story. But I did have a lot of fun while reading it, and it was super quick and easy, and it was a good time. I just don't know if it'll necessarily be one of those books that sticks in my mind, you know, days, weeks, months, years later, because I barely remember reading it, and it was only last month. So I am giving this 4 stars because I liked the experience I had while reading it. I just don't know if it'll be something that makes a lasting impression on me because obviously it hasn't up to this point. The last book I read in May was Anniebot by Sierra Greer, and this was kind of out of my comfort zone, but I really liked the idea of it and the sound of it because it is about AI, and AI is such a hot topic right now, and I don't know, I just felt like it was going to be kind of out of my comfort zone and I was going to like it, and it's really short. I mean, it's not that short, but it is a fairly quick read, so I was really excited about this one. In this book, you are following Anniebot, who was created to be the perfect girlfriend for her human owner, Doug. And you're really just following their relationship and how Annie kind of changes throughout the course of the entire book. And just, it's very interesting. It's a very weird read, and I had a lot of fun while reading it. Kind of surprised me because, again, it's not something that I would typically gravitate towards. I think my biggest issue with it is that I wanted more from it. It's a very quick read. I think I wanted some more like exploration on just like Annie and her feelings, and I think if we had gotten like a little bit longer of a book, I think it would have been more interesting. But I did really like the overall story and I like the route it went. I just haven't read anything like it, and I don't know, it was a good time. I had fun while reading it. It was kind of sad, kind of funny, kind of weird. I don't know. It was like an array of emotions I had going on while reading it, but I am giving it 4 stars. And the last thing I read for May as a whole was the series Goodnight Ponpon. I was very interested in this series. Many people have told me to read it, and then Justin went and surprised me with the whole series. So I thought that May would be the perfect time to read it because I was in a huge slump, and manga is usually a good cure for that. I'm gonna set this stack down because it is very heavy. In Goodnight Ponpon, we are following the main character Ponpon, who is this little guy right here with his little beak and you know, he's a very interesting looking guy. This is a coming of age story, so we're really following Ponpon as he grows up. He's like a child in the beginning, and then we follow him into like adulthood. And I've heard a lot about this. Like, people love this series. It is well loved and people truly rave about this series. Unfortunately for me, I don't really get it. I think the idea of it is interesting. It's very like philosophical and existential about like life and human nature and what makes humans the way they are and what's our purpose in the world and you know, stuff like that. That's not something I'm into. It's not really something that I find interesting. I've heard a lot of people say that this story is really, really depressing and like kind of like horrifying with some of the things that Ponpon goes through. And while I agree that Ponpon goes through some traumatic stuff, I really feel like those things aren't explored a lot. Like, they're very surface level. Something bad will happen and then they kind of just like skim over it. Like, oh, that bad thing happened. Well, we gotta move on because, you know, that's how life goes, which I get, but I just think that, like, for me, as someone who reads a lot of horror and, like, really messed up stuff in my books, it just didn't feel like anything super wild or crazy or mind-blowing. I wasn't like, whoa, this is messing me up. I was just kind of like, okay. I think for me, it's just not something that I typically enjoy. It didn't really do anything for me, like mentally, emotionally, like I wasn't involved that much. I didn't really care about the characters, like even Ponpon, like I just really didn't care about him. So overall, the whole series is getting a 3-star for me. No volume rated higher than like a 3.5. So overall, I'm giving it a 3-star. All right, that was it for May, so let's move into what I read in June. First up was my June book club pick for Patreon, and that was Tell Me I'm Worthless by Allison Rumfitt. I don't even know how to explain this book. It's about these 3 girls that went into a haunted house 3 years ago, and now, like, I don't know, like something happened in the haunted house. Look, I didn't like this book. I'm gonna be completely honest. It was very like edgy for me. I feel like the author was making a statement, which is fine. I totally understood it, but I just think it went over the top for a lot of it, and it's very triggering, like extremely triggering. There's so much like essay and transphobic things and racist stuff. Like it's just a lot. The book is a lot. And it was not an enjoyable experience for me to read. I did not have fun while reading it. I honestly skimmed a lot of the book because sometimes the book would go on and on and on and have so many slurs in one moment that like I just wanted to get away from it. I was like, I don't want to read this. It was very like in your face, and I didn't really love the haunted house portion. It was an interesting choice, I guess. It wasn't something that I expected. It did shock me, and I wasn't, you know, expecting the twist, but it was very weird. I don't know. I can see why people would love this one. I can see the purpose for writing it. I think there are some good things about this book, but I think my experience while reading it it was too much for me, and I just didn't really like the overall plot, so I'm giving this one 2 stars. I ended up reading Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones in the month of June, and now I am a huge fan of Howl's Moving Castle. It is probably my 2nd favorite Studio Ghibli movie ever. I mean, Spirited Away will always be #1, but I think Howl's Moving Castle is like a close second. So I was very much looking forward to reading this one. I knew it wasn't going to be entirely like the movie, and I had already been warned ahead of time, so I was very well aware. I think for me, it just didn't work as well as the movie did. Like, I love the movie, and I think some of the changes that Hayao Miyazaki did just work so incredibly well that, like, I couldn't disengage myself from the movie to read this, and so it was a very weird experience for me because I was longing for those changes that the movie has. And I still think this was an enjoyable reading experience. I still had fun while reading it. I still think it's very cute and heartwarming and, you know, adorable. Like, there are things I like about this book, but it just does not hold a candle to the movie for me. Like, I can't. Like, the movie is too good. I think for those reasons, I'm probably going to give this like a 3.5. I found it enjoyable, but I just didn't like fall head over heels in love with it like I did when I watched the movie for the first time. Next up we have The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. I know this is a well-loved rom-com, and this is about Charlie, who goes on this reality TV show called Ever After, which is basically The Bachelor, and he's going on there to redeem his image. He has some like things that have happened, so he's trying to make himself look better so he can get a job in the tech world like he wants. And he meets Dev, who is his producer on the show, and Dev really kind of gets Charlie, and he's really good and nice to him, and they start up a friendship which leads to more. So I know people absolutely love this story. I thought it was very cute. The thing is the mental health in this book is done extremely well. Charlie suffers from anxiety and OCD, and then Dev deals with depression, and I feel like the mental health was probably the shining star in this book. I think it was handled so beautifully. It was so well written. It was just so well done, and it was really the standout of this book. I think the problem for me is I love reality TV. It is something that I watch a lot. It is like one of the main things that I watch on TV. I'm a big reality TV person. However, the one reality TV show that I just can't stand is The Bachelor. I literally hate The Bachelor. It's the one show that I just don't get the hype with, and I can't watch it because it irritates me so much. And unfortunately, this is just like The Bachelor. Like, it is so inspired by The Bachelor. There are little Easter eggs throughout the story, little like inside jokes that you would get if you watched the show. And I have seen the show, so I did get the jokes. I think for me personally, it just wasn't as interesting or as enjoyable because I don't like The Bachelor. And I will say there were some very irritating moments in this book because of it just related to the show, which I was getting frustrated. It was a hard reading experience. I just didn't like fully love being in this book. So I am unfortunately giving this one 3.5 stars. Then we have The Cipher by Kathy Koja. I believe I've had this book for 4 years and have yet to read it, and it lasts through every one of my unhauls. And I decided that I was gonna read it this month. I wanted to try it, give it a read, see where we were at with it. Wow, I hated this book. I hated it so much. I definitely read this one. I continued until the end. I should have DNF'd it. I did not because I just was very stubborn while reading it. This is about this couple, I guess if you want to call them that. They kind of are a couple, Nicholas and Nakota. And they find this hole in Nicholas's apartment. It's like in this storage room, and it's basically like this black hole. That's what they're like assuming it is. And they're kind of like drawn to it, and they start doing like weird things with it, and then it just kind of all spirals out of control. It was not enjoyable for me. It was not interesting to me. It was not fun for me. It was mostly just boring, and I was getting really irritated with the characters, and I just felt like there was no real point to it. I also wasn't a big fan of the writing style. It felt very like jumbly, rambly, all over the place, and that really bothered me while I was reading it. I just did not have a good time with this one. It was not a pleasant experience. I can see why I left it on my TBR for 4 years, and I should have just unhauled it instead of keeping it on my shelves. So I am giving this 2 stars. Then I read an arc. This is Tiny Threads by Lilium Rivera. This is coming out September 24th of this year. And this is about the main character, Samara, which threw me off because all I could think about was Samara from The Ring. And she gets her dream job working for this fashion house called House of Moda. It's just not the job she thought she was getting into, and weird things start happening. I wanted to love this. I really enjoy horror that is tackling like the fashion, beauty, skincare, you know, kind of realm. I think that's really fun and interesting and fun to watch and see what happens. But this was just not what I expected it to be. I know a lot of people were saying that it was kind of like a gothic Devil Wears Prada. I guess, kind of. I feel like the supernatural elements didn't come out at full force until like the very end. I feel like the actual plot, like the bare plot, is very predictable. It's very typical. It's something that I've seen a lot. I think the social horror of this book was done really well. I was expecting more from it, and I think that I just didn't love where the story went. Again, because it wasn't anything that I hadn't seen before. The story also deals a lot with SA, and that is a huge part of the plot, so definitely be warned if that is a trigger for you. It was okay for me. It wasn't like the best book I've ever read, but overall I'm probably going to give it 3 stars. Then I ended up picking up The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I'm a big fan of Lucy Foley's mysteries. I've had a really good time with everyone that I've read, so I was really excited for this new release from her, and I really love the cover of this one, so I expected it to be a really good time. In this book, we're following the opening weekend for this place called The Manor, and it's a luxury resort. It's for very rich people. It's very exclusive. Sunday morning, there is a body found, so the police are investigating it. So you're basically reading the lead up to what happened to this person who was found dead, you know, who did it, what happened, blah, blah, blah. It's very similar to every other Lucy Foley book that I've read. So if you like that kind of setup, I feel like you would be used to this and you would probably enjoy this one as well. For me, the first half was very, very, very slow. I was not as invested in the first half. I was kind of just like, okay, I'm along for the ride, but I'm not like feeling this draw to like really need to uncover what's going on. The second half I really liked because the vibe of this book is very forest, witchy, like, I don't know, there's a very interesting kind of vibe to this book, and I really liked the second half, and I really liked where the story went. It reminds me of a few movies that I watched and really enjoyed. It just took a really long time to get there for me. I don't feel like I enjoyed this one more than The Guest List or The Paris Apartment. I feel like it was probably a little bit lower than those two, so I'm going to give this one a 3.5. Then I picked up Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. This is kind of like a paranormal rom-com. It's about the main character Gretchen, who is a medium, but she's a fake medium. So she basically lies to all her clients, and her richest, like wealthiest paying client hires her to help do like basically like an exorcism on her bridge partner's farm and try to like figure out what's going on there, right? Because there's some like hauntings, you know? And so she expects to find like an old man that she can kind of come in, settle his mind, and then leave. But she finds this like hot dude named Charlie, and he does not like her. He already from the beginning is like, you're a fraud. I'm not gonna listen to anything you say. You just take people's money and you're a terrible person. But while she's there, she ends up realizing that she can actually see a real ghost, and his name's Everett, and he tells her that Charlie is in danger and she needs to help him save Charlie from the same fate that Everett encountered himself. This was cute. I think I just wanted more. Like, I didn't love the relationship between Gretchen and Charlie. It felt like a little lackluster. I felt like I was left like questioning if they really actually liked each other. It just didn't feel like they had a ton of chemistry. I don't know, it wasn't as believable as some rom-coms I've read, but I did like the paranormal aspect. I thought that was really fun, and you know, it made me laugh a few times, but I just wasn't like absolutely devouring this one and like obsessed with it. So I think I'm also giving this 3.5 stars. So the next 3 books I'm kind of doing together because they are a trilogy, and that is 3 Star Wars books. I ended up reading Queen's Peril, Queen's Shadow, and Queen's Hope. These are all by E.K. Johnston, and I wanted to read some Star Wars books, and Padme is one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. I decided these would be fun books for me. They are YA as well, so they read extremely quickly. This one is basically a prequel, and you are following Padme as she becomes Queen Amidala and as she gathers her like handmaidens and their relationship, that kind of stuff, and it leads up and then it kind of follows into Phantom Menace, the movie. In this one, it's basically the events that take place before Attack of the Clones, so it's when Padme leaves being Queen Amidala and becomes a senator. And then in this one, it's taking place during the Clone Wars, so right before Revenge of the Sith happens. Yeah, these were a really good time. I really enjoyed them a lot. I thought they were a lot of fun. I loved getting to see more of Padme. I think she's a very underrepresented character in the movies, and I love her very much, so I loved getting to see her in like more of her element, being queen and being a senator. They're very like political heavy though. It's very much about like politics and like her job as a senator and as the queen. So I mean, I don't think everyone would like these, but I had a good time with them. I really enjoyed seeing her relationship with her handmaidens. I thought that was really sweet and cute. So overall, I loved all 3 of them, and I'm going to give them all 4 stars. Second to last, I picked up Emily Henry's Funny Story, which I was very excited to read because I love Emily Henry. She is definitely one of my favorite authors, and I enjoy everything she writes. This is about the characters Daphne and Miles, and Daphne's fiance just left her for Miles's girlfriend. So their exes are now dating each other. So they decide to fake date to show that they're like fine with everything, they're moving on, you know, they're getting over it. They're also living together in one apartment, and they end up, you know, catching feelings for each other and becoming really good friends, which I really love their relationship. I thought this was very sweet. I just love the way Emily Henry tackles topics in her books are just as important and just as well done as the romance itself, and that's something that I really appreciate and I really love. I had a great time with this one. I am gonna give it 4.5. It's not a 5-star because Beach Read is a 5-star, and it's still my favorite Emily Henry, and nothing will beat Beach Read, okay? Nothing will beat it. So I can't give this one 5 stars, okay? I can't. And the last book that I read in June, and the only 5-star that I had, was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Now, if you remember, I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and it was horrible because it was a 5-star book that ended in a 3-star because it had my least favorite trope in the universe at the very end, and I had to take it down because I was so upset. This was such a freaking good book. This book is about Emma and Justin, and they both believe that they have a curse on them because anyone that breaks up with them ends up finding their one true love afterwards. So they kind of meet by accident through this Reddit thread, and they're kind of both shocked that someone else has this curse like they do. So they decide to date, because if they date and then break up, the curse will be broken and then they will meet their soulmate. When they meet and start doing this, you know, little experiment, they end up really catching feelings for each other, but they both have a lot going on. Justin is inheriting full custody of his siblings, and Emma has a very toxic family situation. Her mother and her have a very complicated relationship, and her mother actually ends up showing up while she is doing this experiment with Justin and adding more chaos to the whole equation. The talk of trauma was like so well done, and Abby Jimenez reminds me a lot of Emily Henry. They both feel very similar in the way that they can have this cutesy little romance story going on, but they have like other topics being talked about that are very like tough and emotional, and you know, they're very serious, and I love that. I love the mix of both romance and, you know, serious stuff. So this one literally, God, the ending really made me cry. I was just so, it was just a lot. It was such a good story, but it was so beautiful. I loved it. 5 stars. It was a great read, and I have to read more by Abby Jimenez, so I will be picking up Part of Your World because now I need to read more. And I did read them out of order, I know, but whatever, it's fine, I don't care. And that is it, my friends. Those are all the books that I read during the months of May and June. Not the worst reading months ever, but not the best. I was going through a slump. I did what I could. If you want to let me know what you read during May and June, if you even remember what you read during May, I know it's been a very long time. If you want to let me know what your least favorite books of those months were, you can let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That way I know you enjoy my wrap-ups and I can keep doing them for you all in the future. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!